The Expert Series is brought to you by Draw It Paint, a dry erase paint company that allows you to create the exact space you want. Our products are designed for performance, engineered for durability, and manufactured for quality. Draw It Paint's 3 formulas will allow you to reach every possibility. Behold your best work.
Actually a first-year teacher in a little city called Grovetown, Georgia, which is not far from Augusta. I teach 6th grade math and loving it. And yeah, that's pretty much my intro, I guess.
How long have you been in Georgia?
So I have been in Georgia since about 2014, summer 2014. I was actually stationed in the military here from 2008 to 2011, and then moved away and then came back here after I got out. So been here ever since.
What made you choose that city in particular?
My husband was still actually in the military when we moved back here, and we just haven't really left since then. So just kind of went to school here, got my degree, and then started teaching.
Right. Now you talk a little bit about being in the U.S. Navy. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what got you into that?
Yeah. So actually I joined the military because I didn't feel like I did well enough in high school to get into a good college, and I didn't have a lot of money to get into college. So I was like, oh, let's join the military. So I did that right out of high school, and I spent 8 years as a linguist. And after about 6 years, I just kind of knew that I really was ready to go to college and move on with my, the rest of my life. And really the reason I joined the military in the first place was to pay for school. So I had always wanted to be a teacher. And so it was after realizing, I was like, okay, I have the money to pay for this. Now I can go do what I really want to be doing with my life. So it was just kind of a transitional period for me, but it was a really good experience because I feel like I really grew from it. It really helped me mature a lot, because definitely going to college after being in the military for 8 years, you really feel a lot older just in general being around all the college kids. But then just, watching them versus me, it made me feel like, okay, clearly I've done some growing up in the last 8 years. So, yeah.
Now, you used the military for different reasons. Of course, it served as a great opportunity for you. Did you find a lot of the people you were with were there for, that same purpose?
I wouldn't say a lot of them. I'd say a good chunk, I feel like really, that's most of the reason I feel like originally they may have joined the military. Most of us do fall in love with being in the military once we're in it. And honestly, if I had liked my job better, I probably would have stayed in the military because I do like the structure, and I think people who tend to be very type A do well in the military as we like rules and regulations and we know what to expect, and so that part's good. But for the most part, I think people just fall in love with it, and it's they like being able to rely on what to do day to day, and they like to be able to know what to expect with what's expected of them every single day. They like having the stability of having a job and knowing they're not likely to get fired and get put in leadership positions, and it kind of just becomes something you fall in love with, I think, for the most people who stay in the military. So I think it just kind of depends on the person, whether they are like me and are like, I got what I needed from it and it's time for me to go, or they're just like, hey, I like this, so I'm gonna keep doing it. So
did it create any long-term bonds for you?
Well, actually, I met my husband in the military, so yep, that was a long-term bond. And actually, my best friend is a Navy chief in the military right now. So she actually is in Colorado right now. So we don't get to see a whole lot of each other, but she's my best friend and probably always will be. And I met her at our language training when we were getting ready to be linguists out in California. So yeah, I would say long-term bonds. My husband's best friend is also military and not living here, but we keep in touch. So
we spoke to a realtor from the state of Washington, and she told us that her husband is also in the military, and they've done a lot of moving around wherever it is. I think she went to Korea, all over the US. Is that something that you experienced as well?
Not a whole lot of moving with my job. I mean, there are specific locations that we really were able to go to. My boot camp was in Illinois, and then my training was in California. Then we spent 3 years in Georgia, 3 years in Maryland, and then we were back in Georgia. So not a whole lot of like overseas. There are those opportunities, but it just wasn't ever an opportunity that we were afforded or took advantage of either. So I think it just depends, A, on your job in the military, and then B, just on kind of like what you prefer and are able to take advantage of. So.
You introduced yourself, of course, as a first-year teacher. Yeah. What got you into teaching? What kind of motivated that career path?
So I've kind of always wanted to be a teacher. And then because of the military, I just kind of was like, no, I'll do, whatever for a while. And then actually when I got out, college, the idea of going back to college actually scared me. So I was like, oh, I'll just be a secretary because I'm good at taking phone calls and keeping lists, and I like spreadsheets, so I can totally do this. And my husband was like, are you an insane person? Go back to school and do what you really love. So I actually started out as a music education major, and then realized that I really liked the teaching aspect more, and I didn't feel like the program I was originally in was really teaching me how to be a teacher. So I actually switched to elementary first, ended up in elementary education, and was like, whoo, no, I can't go any lower than third grade because these kids are crazy and I can't be wiping noses and taking them to the bathroom. So I ended up in middle grades, and after I was in middle grades, I was in there for a day and knew I was in the right spot. So it was a lot of jumping around, but always knowing the teacher was where I wanted to be.
Right. And of course you had this summer to kind of prepare your classroom, get everything ready. What was that experience like?
Yikes. So actually during student teaching, I feel pretty strongly about having a flexible classroom, like just flexible seating, meaning like they get to pick where they want to sit, what type of seat they want to sit in, because as a student myself, sitting in college and sitting in a chair and a desk that doesn't separate from the table you're uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, it's hard to learn. So I had been collecting supplies for my classroom for probably close to a year, and our garage was just full of tables and chairs and stools and all kinds of stuff. So it took a while. It took me like 3 days to get all of the furniture I'd collected moved into my classroom. But the nice thing is I'm close to a door, so I didn't have to pull it in long. So it was a lot of just like furniture putting together, furniture moving in, and then since I've been in there too, the layout of the classroom has changed, just because once the kids are in there, you have all this idea in your head about how great it's going to be. And then the kids get in there and you're like, I hate it. It's not at all what I wanted it to be. So just in the last probably few weeks, I've rearranged the classroom. It's so much better. So, but yeah. So it was you think a lot going into as a first year teacher that a lot of it's just going to be setting up the room, making it look pretty. And you're like, oh, I like being in here because I spend 8 hours. And then you're like, first week of school starts and you feel behind in paperwork already. And you're like, crap, I wanted to label things and I didn't label things. And you're just like, oh no. So it takes a good 9 weeks to get just feeling like you got your feet underneath you.
Yeah, I can't even tell you how much I remember starting with rows and then getting into foursomes and then getting into to horizontal rows. It was crazy, I remember. But I think it was to kind of, play on the atmosphere of the room and to just make a better learning environment looking back at it.
Exactly. And that's kind of my thing, is that I really want it to be a place that, because I teach math, kids have such a strong reaction to math by the time they get to middle school. They either hate it or they love it. And there's really no middle ground. You don't feel so about math. So I really wanted it to be a place that kids felt safe to make mistakes. I really wanted it to be a place they felt like they enjoyed coming to. So that was another reason I really wanted the flexible seating. And my classroom looks a lot like a living room. I mean, it has a giant area rug in it. I still do rug time in 6th grade and the kids love it. They roll around on my rug. They lay on the rug to do their work. I mean, I think the goal of having that space that the kids felt comfortable in really I've achieved that goal, because they do feel comfortable in it. They are okay with making mistakes. They love having the lights off and the lamps on, and, they they feel safe in my space. They feel comfortable in it. And I think that that shows in the work that they put into my projects and classwork and tests even. So I think that my original plan has worked out in that area. So yay.
Just kind of building off of that theme of allowing the kids to make mistakes. I remember seeing one of your Instagram posts, actually, you have a kind of a tally of your own mistakes and you let the kids kind of let you know when you've made them. What was that experience like and what made you want to do that?
So actually my instructional specialist, I had told her I felt, we both love Jill Bowler and she's amazing. And I actually read one of her mathematical mindset books over the summer, preparing for getting ready for kids to make mistakes. And really having like a growth mindset when they're making mistakes in math. And she really talks a lot about that. And I was talking to my IS about just how I wanted my classroom to be like that. She was like, you should put your mistakes on the board. She was like, that's what I used to do. And it's awesome. And I'm like, okay. So first day of school, I wrote my mistakes on the board and I do a house system in my classroom. So I give them points when they find out I make a mistake. And, you know, it's one thing to just put the tally up there, but I think really the point of doing it is to model my behavior. So the kids see me make a mistake and I'm like, oh, awesome. Great mistake. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I will fix it. And I'm not blowing up and getting upset about it. I'm not crying. I'm not calling myself a failure, you know, and the kids, they get a kick out of it because they'll see days where I don't have any mistakes and I'm on it. And then there's days where I have 20 mistakes because I can't say the kid's name right, or I'm giving them the answer while I'm writing the question, or I'm saying the wrong number as I'm writing on the board, or I misspelled a word. They're like, geez, Miss Woods, you're real off today. Like, yes, I am. We all have a bad day. So I think that's, they enjoy it too. They're always like, ooh, you know, because I tell them if I'm not drinking water, that's a mistake. If I don't have my glasses on, it's a mistake. So yeah, they enjoy it and it's been fun.
I thought it was really interesting that you did something like that because I think it's actually one of the best ways to stay on your toes and stay alert and really keep track of the progress you're making, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like the kids just seeing that, it helps me too, because I feel like all too often it's easy to teach about growth mindset and not have it ourselves. And I think, and I tell them that it's not that you have growth mindset and you always have it in everything. You might have growth mindset for playing video games, but then when it comes to doing math, you're like, I suck at this. So, you know, and I have growth mindset about certain things and not about others. But so I think that's important for them to see. And it's also good for me to see my own mistakes and seeing a day where I'm like, oh, if I can make 10 mistakes in a day, then I can't really, you know, it keeps me, I think, in the moment. So that way, sometimes when these kids are acting bananas and it's close to Halloween and they're bouncing off the walls, that, you know, I can make 20 mistakes in a day. You could probably make way more than that. You're in 6th grade. So I think it's humbling. And it's also like a really good check for me to make sure that I'm not overreacting in situations just because I'm not really like aware of my own self. So I think that's been really helpful for them and for me to make sure that, you know, we're both on the same page and I'm being empathetic of them and remembering what it's like to be a 6th grader because we forget. So.
Would you say it's safe to say that patience is one of the best values you can have as an educator?
Oh, yes. And I still struggle with that every day. Yes, you have to be patient. And leading up to doing teaching, I actually did not consider myself a patient person. And even as a mom, I'm not patient. It's a growing everyday battle that you have. And some days you're more patient, some days you're not. And you see those days that all the other teachers aren't patient, you're getting emails after emails of all the kids getting written up and you're like, yep, somebody else isn't being patient either. But we all have our days, we're human. But yes, it's definitely a desired trait for being a teacher is either being aware of your patience and lack thereof, or just being a patient person in general. So
another Instagram post that you had that we saw kind of talked about you being the best teacher. I think it was just a red marker on a whiteboard. Yeah. How rewarding is it when you get that type of feedback, especially being a first year teacher and only being, you know, several weeks into the career?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, You know, they say like words of affirmations one, and gift giving, and I think the other one, there's a few others, but I'm a words of affirmation person. So anytime anybody gives me a compliment, it like lights me on fire. I'm like, yeah, I'm the best person alive. So just to get kid feedback like that for me, and especially the way that that child wrote it, it was really just, it wasn't necessarily the, you're the best teacher ever. It was the, my friends were right. You're the best teacher ever. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me outside of school, which just, of course they are. I mean, whether it's good or bad, they're talking about you. But to know that my own students were like bragging about me outside of school, that was just super uplifting. And it makes me feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing. And, you know, not every kid's going to like you. That's just life. I mean, you don't like everybody you work with, you don't like everybody you're around, and that's part of it. But to feel like you get a pretty overwhelming sense of the kids really like me, I think that's important, because it's hard to learn from somebody you don't like. So if you know, you're going to shut down in a class where you feel like the teacher's mean to you all the time, or, you know, they're ugly, or I don't know, who knows what your reasoning is, and you're a sixth grader. But yeah, for me, I feel like it was really good. And I try to keep, I have a file next to my desk that's a smile file. So anytime I have notes that kids write me, or, you know, they draw me a picture or something that really makes me feel good, and I'm having a bad day, I open up my smile file and I'm like, this is why you're doing this. Chill out. Take a deep breath. It's okay. The kids love you. Even though they hate you right now, they'll be over in 5 minutes.
They usually hate you before the exam, then love you a little bit after the exam, right?
Yes. Right. Or they hate you after the exam for, you know, because they weren't happy with their grade or whatever. Yeah. So it's all your fault. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure what.
Another teacher that we've had on, it was a third grade teacher from San Diego, and she tells us that when she, you know, tests her kids, and some of them do not as great, she kind of tries to tell them that, hey, it's just third grade. This isn't gonna put you on a path towards a bad life or anything like that. Would you say that's an important factor being an educator, is trying to tell the kid that, hey, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't that big of a deal?
You know, that's a really tough question, because I feel like that's really what you want to say. And being in sixth grade, especially, you know, I teach on-level math and I teach accelerated math. And for the kids who are in accelerated math, it's like a really big deal, because, you know, that means that they're on track to be able to take college courses in high school if they stay that path. And for them, it's, I mean, starts to be a pretty big deal in middle school, and especially by 8th grade, they really start harping that, oh, you should be taking college level or high school level classes. And you know, and it's like we're pushing up the timeline for these kids constantly. So I feel like that's what you want to say, is that in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But at the same time, I feel like it is a big deal. But I guess with the philosophy of most of our education, and like the way that I teach and the way that my school is and the way that my county is that I work for, is that we're very all about giving second chances. And so if you do bomb a test, not the end of the world, we can let you retake it. You know, we work with you. I even did that today, worked with some kids during their connection classes, which is like, you know, art and music and stuff, and let them retake a test. Because, you know, you have a bad day or you forget the rule for this one thing and it happens to be 50% of your test and you're like, crap. So, you know, it happens. And that's part of the mistake thing that I try to teach in class, is that, you know, one day shouldn't affect the rest of your life. Sometimes it does. But for our assessments and test taking, yeah, we try to give them second chances and make sure that they understand that there's limits sometimes to what you can fix, but if we can allow you to fix it, we will. So
would you say the worst part of the job is kind of giving those bad grades?
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like in the beginning it was for me, because I kind of took it personally, I think. You know, because you stand up there and you teach for however many hours you're teaching, and you feel like the kids should just be focused on you, like you're like the most important person in the world. And sometimes I tell them that, I'm like, I'm more important than you, stop talking. But So yeah, I think in the beginning I did take it personally when the kids didn't do as well as I had hoped. And I actually gave a test today and I don't feel like they're doing as well as I had hoped already, but you know, it's life and they're not going to pay attention every minute of every day. You're going to have those kids that are paying attention constantly, and you're going to have the ones that are not doing anything. And I think that when you stop taking it personally and just realize, you know, you're doing what you can do. And if they take it, they take it. And if they don't, they don't. And, you know, to an extent, it has to be somewhat their decision. Especially once you get to like middle school and elementary school, it definitely, I feel like is more, it's more on the teacher because the kids kind of don't have that choice. But once you're in middle school, I mean, it's harder to force them to do things. So I don't know that I would say it's the hardest, but I do feel like it's the most challenging to not take personally that, you know, kids are going to have bad grades. It just happens. Yeah, I don't know. I think the hardest part for teaching is the extra stuff. It's the meetings and the trainings and, you know, making sure you're talking to parents and just trying to make plans that you know you want to do, but don't really have the time. And it's the extra hours at home and the extra hours on the weekends and stuff like that. That's, I think, the hardest part. And not feeling guilty for it, you know, because like this week, normally it's a pretty normal thing for me to work, I would say most of my weekend, trying to prepare for the next week, making sure I have fun activities for my kids, making sure they're relevant activities that they're going to feel like they get something out of, making sure they have something active to do in class. And this last weekend, I didn't do that. I didn't touch anything from work. And I came in Monday feeling really guilty when my desk was a mess and I didn't feel prepared for the week. And I was like, I don't know what did I do that for? But you know, like you have to have that work-life balance. And I think it's a hard thing for a lot of teachers because we tend to be very giving with our time and our hearts and our minds that we have to be gentle on ourselves too. So that I think is the hardest part.
Of course, I think a lot of the time teachers put the students before their own life, right?
Oh, for 100% sure. Yes. Yes. It's very easy to do that too. I mean, you are with them so long and you start to, I mean, you love them. You don't not love them. They're like your kids. That's why we call them our kids. And, so yeah, I mean, it's really easy to put them first and to not pay attention to yourself. And, you know, like I like to run and I don't do it as often as I probably would like to and should, because I get tired at the end of the day and then I'm like, well, I need to grade these papers, or I need to give so-and-so feedback, or I need to put this on Google Classroom so that they are prepared for tomorrow. And then it's 8:30 and you're like, no, I have to go to bed because it's dark outside and I can't run. So yeah.
Besides running, what other activities do you like to do outside of work? How do you balance that work life?
Ooh, I'm bad at it, honestly. Mostly because education is my hobby. I'm a weird one. I actually really enjoy educational research and books, and like I'm trying to write an article about looping right now, and it's for me, it kind of meshes together. I'm really bad about having hobbies that are not educational related. But you know, like I try to force myself to, like I said, go run because I do enjoy it. And, you know, having binge watching Netflix series with popcorn, and I like to knit and crochet. So I try to force myself to do that sometimes. It doesn't happen nearly as often as probably it did beforehand, but yeah, I'm probably a bad one to ask that question too. Just because education is my hobby. I'm a weirdo.
Actually, what a lot of the experts we've had on say is that they are bad at balancing that work and that life, because I think one common theme with all of you guys is that you love what you do and you're passionate about it, and you want to keep pushing forward and make people's lives better. Yes.
Yes, 100% agree with that. I mean, I think that's something my husband has said for quite a long time, is that like I have a notable passion for this. Like it's clear to basically anybody that talks to me that I love my job, even if there's days where I'm like, this sucks. You can't talk to a single person that knows me for more than 10 minutes without them being able to be like, yeah, she is meant to do this. She loves it. It literally is seeping out of her pores every minute of every day. She can't stop talking about her kids. She can't stop talking about all the research that she reads and the brain stuff and just everything. Yeah. So.
At what point in your life do you think it clicked for you?
Oh, so I mean, honestly, like I said, I always wanted to be a teacher, but I think the click moment was the day my first class in the College of Education, after I started taking like actual teaching classes. My very first class was Needs and Natures of a Middle Grades Learner. And after that first class, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I meant to be doing. Like this right here. I felt like I was on fire. Like I was like, yeah, get it. This is what life is. I'm so excited. And I've been like that since then. So yeah, yes, I'm a hot mess for education. Woo.
Now, of course, the main part of the job is making these lesson plans. Mm-hmm. Where do you get inspiration from for creating these? Because I think you do have a creative mind, of course, and you like to integrate a lot of different things. Where does that kind of come from?
Yikes. A lot of it, I mean, I take a lot of stuff that I had from my, I don't know what you call them, collaborating teacher, the person I was with for my student teaching. I do use a lot of the stuff that I have from her because they do say, like, especially your first couple of years, don't reinvent the wheel. You know, don't stress yourself out trying to plan the most perfect lessons that are fit for your students every single day because it'll wear you out. So I try to use things from other people, you know, if it works for them, and I try it, and sometimes they don't work and I'm like, this was a terrible idea, and I just put it away. I'm like, nope, won't do that again. So I try to use things from other people. I do a lot of research. I have websites that I really, really like. Basically anything that Joe Bowler recommends, I try to do because she's amazing and a rock star. And, you know, I ask for help a lot because, I mean, there are people that have been doing this way longer than me that are way smarter than me and have experience in this. So I try to ask. And sometimes I have really great ideas. Like, you know, I'll see something in a book. I'm like, oh, I should totally change that to make it fit my kids. And like when I was on the textbook adoption committee, I saw, there was a word problem in a book that was about making an Arnold Palmer. And it was talking about ratios. And it was just a word problem that was like, what's the ratio for the perfect Arnold Palmer, or if this is the mixture or whatever. And I was like, oh, we should totally do that as an actual lesson. Like I should make Arnold Palmers in the class and the kids could try them and it would be awesome. And it was awesome. We did it and it was amazing. And the kids loved it. And I feel like they really understood, you know, part to whole relationships and being able to do all that stuff. So, I mean, sometimes you just have a light bulb moment and sometimes you have to borrow materials from other people. It just, I don't know. So, yep.
One of the, actually our first expert that was the pilot episode for the series, he's a Philadelphia high school teacher, and he teaches English literature. Now, what he's noticed throughout his career is that it's really difficult to grab the attention from his students. So what he did was he used hip hop and he used relevant pop culture information. Sometimes he uses Fortnite. He's used Marvel before to really get that message out there. And, you know, I think his kids love him. Just watching his videos.
They think he's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really important to make that connection with your students aside from, like, you know, the regular traditional material itself. It's good to reinvent, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they say one of the reasons middle school for me was the place I wanted to be is because they say relationships first, content second. And I think that's so true. Like like I said, kids aren't going to learn from you if they don't like you, which, I mean, you're not going to reach them all, but you know, if you know what TikTok is, you're awesome. And if you have a TikTok page and you let your kids follow you, they're going to love you forever, even if it's math related. I haven't made any TikTok yet, but I do have an account, and trust me, my kids follow me and they think I'm the coolest person alive because I have a TikTok and I watch their TikToks and talk to them about them later. I'm like, I know what song that was playing. I heard the lyrics, might want to watch yourself there. And, you know, they think it's funny. And just speaking to them on their level, learning the slang, and just being silly. And I mean, yeah, they love all of that. Using Bitmojis in my slideshows, and I use memes all the time that the kids think are funny. And actually, another thing I really like doing is putting pictures of myself in my slideshows. I went to a conference, and there was a lady named Kim Campbell that had talked about throwing random pictures in your slideshows of your prom photo, like in the middle of your teaching, like just, oh, whoop, how'd that get on there? So, you know, and the kids think it is hilarious when you put pictures of yourself that's just kind of embarrassing, but you're like, whatever, I don't really care. They love it. And, you know, it's a good brain break. They take a few minutes, they learn something about you, you learn something about them. It builds that bond. And I feel like there's a piece of education that is really essential, building bonds between you and the kids. And I feel like education in general, just teaching math would be hard if I didn't do those things, because then, you know, I wouldn't be able to do things like Arnold Palmer's and be able to put Fortnite maps in my class and stuff like that. So yeah, yes, for sure.
Now, what was the first day like? Can you take us through what you did to kind of break the ice?
Oh, first day. Let's see. First day for me was talking about, I gave them a little background on me. Actually, that's what I did. First day was all about me. That was the class lesson. It was all about me and my class. So I gave them slideshows about things I like, that my background, tell them that I was terrified because I was a first year teacher, and that, you know, I was scared to be in there, and that I was nervous, and I know they're nervous, and that I've already gotten lost in the school, and they probably will too. And going over my rules. I have so many rules. I have like a rule wall. It's kind of intimidating when you see it, but I read Ron Clark's book, and he has those essential 55. So I picked 26 of them that I liked, and so I have 26 rules like pasted on the wall, and it's scary when you walk in there. But that was my first day, and then day 2 was about them. So I had them fill out Facebook sheets, kind of telling about like who they are and what they like. And you know, one of the questions I asked was what their favorite song was, and told them that I was going to make a student playlist of the songs they put on there. So I have a YouTube playlist, and, you know, when they're working and doing independent work, I put their playlist on, and their favorite songs are popping on, and they're singing along and bebopping. And, you know, I had them do, like, they had to ask another person about themselves, and then they had to introduce the other person. So it wasn't, because you always feel awkward talking about yourself, but you feel less awkward talking about the person sitting next to you. So, you know, they had to, I say, you know, a lot, sorry. They would ask the other person about themselves and then introduce them to the class. So it was a little less awkward when you introduce somebody else. But, you know, we spent time, I said, you know, again, see, now I'm going to be really aware of it.
Hey, we do all the editing on our side, so don't even worry.
Yeah, we spent a day learning me, and then we spent a day learning about them. So, and then we had since I do a house system in my class, like Harry Potter, we spent some time letting them pick what house color they wanted, voting on the animal, voting on what adjectives they wanted to describe their house. They made banners, and just, yeah, it was really awesome. So it was just more about like building that relationship and making ourselves, it was clear that we're like a family, and that we're gonna like each other, whether you like it or not. So, yeah.
Do you think that's where some kind of classrooms fall apart or fail, when that relationship isn't established?
Oh yeah. I think a lot of classroom management is the relationships. If you have good relationships with your kids, then it's less likely they're going to act like insane people in there. It's less likely that they're going to want to disappoint you too by writing them up because they're, you know, doing cartwheels across the classroom or hitting somebody or, you know, whatever. When you have those relationships, they don't want to disappoint you because they want you to like them too. Just as much as we want them to like us, they want you to like them. So when you have that bond with them and you ask them about their day and you talk about your life, then yeah, they're way less likely to be crazy. And you know, that's not true for all the kids, obviously. I mean, I have kids in my class that act like insane people sometimes, and you're like, who are you? And what did you do? And I have kids in my class that act like angels, and then I hear about how they're acting in other people's classes, and I'm like, who are you? And, it's not that those teachers don't build relationships with their kids. It just might be that they like me better, or we have a different relationship. And so I think it's essential to have relationships with the kids, but sometimes it's not going to work. And sometimes your personalities just aren't going to meld, and you got to rely on the teacher next door having that relationship with them to help you in your classroom sometimes. So.
Do you think the evolution of social media, the innovations of technology have kind of made it more crucial or not crucial, but easier to teach outside of the classroom? Like you talk a little bit about TikTok. What other opportunities has social media and technology given you?
So I probably haven't used social media to the fullest benefit. I know a lot of people that use Twitter. They'll ask, oh, hey, what are, like, for instance, I know somebody who was like, oh, I need to, my kids are learning about Japan. Does anybody teach in Japan or have students that can talk to my kids? And then, you set up this Google Meet or a Skype session, and then they're able to talk and actually see some of the cultures almost in real life. I mean, for them, it's pretty much real life because, we all live on our phones and TVs now. I think the kids really I use Instagram, and I think the kids really like when I post pictures of them and, from our school dances, when they get to take pictures with me, or when they win, Jeopardy, and I post the winners on Instagram, and they're like, yeah, I'm famous. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Good job. So I'm sure there are other avenues too that teachers who've been doing this way longer than me and are way hipper than me have figured out, and I'm still working on those. But I do want to get, a lot of my kids are into the TikTok right now, and that's, I think, the thing I'm going to start trying to use is making those quick videos that maybe are silly sometimes and maybe are informational that you don't really realize you're learning. And because just that 30 seconds sometimes is enough to reach them, and then they're moving on again. So we'll see. I'm playing around with that one.
Have you set any goals for yourself as far as, being that first year teacher, and even looking beyond that, and how your career will kind of pan out?
Yeah, I actually, I use the Stickies app or program on my Mac. So I have a sticky on the top right-hand corner of my Mac that says goals, actually, and I have several of them. I am a reach for the stars kind of girl. So I have winning Rookie of the Year is one of my goals. And I know that's like a lofty whatever, like how are you going to know that you're going to win that? But I'm like, I'm going to get it. It's going to be me. I'm going to work my tail off. I know that eventually I do want to teach college. So that's on my goal. I want to be published and present at a conference. So those are some of my goals. So, yeah, we'll see. But eventually I will reach all of mine. I'm a goal getter. That's what I do. So, but yes, I set goals frequently, and I make my kids do it too, because I think it's important having goals and reaching them and making them attainable, and making them sometimes things that you don't think are something you might get, but you're going to set it anyway. You're like, I'm going to put this as a goal. I'm going to try and work toward it. So, yeah.
Now, of course, a few of these are long-term goals. One of our experts calls them macro goals, and he talks about little micro goals that you can use to get there. Is that something you do as well? Kind of set these smaller goals to kind of help the process?
I guess I don't put it on paper. And I guess I really don't think about it like it's a goal. I guess I do think about steps I need to take, like what are my next steps in order to reach my goal. So I guess those in that sense would be micro goals. So yeah, but I don't write those down. Maybe I should. Maybe having written down would help me kind of stay on track with some of them and check in occasionally. That's a good idea. I'm going to write that down later. Thanks.
Now, of course, it's not always smooth sailing, right? Everyone has their own trials and tribulations through life. What kind of moments of adversity have you had to go through, throughout the beginning, through going back to school, and now being in your first classroom?
So I think I mean, the biggest one for me, I think probably was realizing that I had the stuff to go back to school. Since I was kind of trying to take the easy way out and just do something I was good at that, you know, didn't challenge me. And so I think that was my first real, I guess, obstacle that I had to overcome. And then once I was in school, I feel like balancing, again, kind of like your work life, having a kid and being older in college is hard. I mean, I come home and I have to make dinner and take care of my daughter and make sure that she feels like I am paying her attention, also still doing my homework and going to class and doing all this stuff. And now again, doing it as a first-year teacher. I mean, most first-year teachers don't have families. I mean, at least if you come from out of college, you may be married by the time you're out of college, but it's not likely you have a kid. So having that just to balance all of that stuff, and to realize later in life that I am highly ambitious in my career goals and things like that, and having to kind of not let myself be selfish, I guess, and realize that, okay, yeah, these are my goals and eventually I will reach them, but they may not be on my timeline because I do have a family and I do have kids. Yeah, so I think that in itself is a challenge for me sometimes, is just realizing that it's not all about me. That kind of sounded bad. But yeah.
I don't think it's bad at all. I don't think it's bad at all.
Yeah.
I think it's really brave to go back to school and make that career change. I went to a university that had a decent amount of, I guess, mature students, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. But from the outside looking in, I was like, they have a lot of it together. They have life experience. Yeah. They know what they want, right?
Right.
Which a lot of younger people, they don't know what they want. So
right.
Do you think it would have been a little bit different if you had that opportunity just to go to school when you were younger and become a teacher through that?
Oh, yikes. Yeah. I think if I had gone to school right out of college, I would not be ambitious. I probably would not have done as well in school, just because that's the trend I was on in high school anyway, is just not really taking full advantage of the opportunities I was given, and just kind of squandering my intelligence and my talent, I guess. So yeah, I don't think I would be where I am, and I don't think I would be as successful if I had gone to school originally and just tried to roll directly into teaching, because I could not imagine how different my life would be if I had not joined the military and really done a lot of growing up. Because I mean, I wouldn't have called myself ever a leader. I would not have called myself ambitious growing up. But I think after being in the military and being able to see myself in those roles, and then going to school later and realizing that, oh, okay, yeah, I'm awesome at this. You know, like giving that later self-esteem boost, I think really is a lot different than if I had gone originally. Yeah. Would not have changed that.
Do you think those themes with the military, with building a routine, do you think it kind of allows you to reach your full potential, or at least find what you're good at?
Oh, I mean, probably not for everybody, but I mean, for me, heck yeah. I think there's a lot of mentorship in the military. There's a lot of goal setting that happens in the military. There's a lot of evaluations constantly, and comparing, kind of like that healthy competition between people. And I think a lot of that really helped shape me into feeling like you want to grow, and then not being stagnant and okay with just mediocre, and really feeling like I was given opportunities to be practicing leadership and be mentored and show me how, like, there was a lot of modeling, just like in teaching, how we model how we want our students to be. I feel like there's a lot of modeling in the military amongst higher ups, and really showing people how to grow up.
And of course, through student teaching, you have a mentor teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Were they just as important for that personal growth?
Oh, yes. I mean, honestly, for I think because I'm older and I have a little more life experience, I was really ready. I felt ready, honestly. By the time I was in student teaching, I was like, I could take this class over, it'd be no big deal. And I think a lot of people kind of felt the same way about me. And I've been told that by like the people who came to observe me. They were like, you could be a first year teacher and you'd be fine. But I think having that person kind of be there to bounce ideas off of all the time and kind of be your safety net was really important, because, you know, they let you try those things you want to try and are there to kind of pick up the pieces if it fails. And now it's a little scarier because I'm on the line if it fails. And my kids aren't getting it and I'm like, crap. But yeah, so I think that was a really good relationship, and she and I still talk. And, you know, if I still have a question, I can go be like, hey, do you have a resource for this? Or do you have an idea for this? Or I'm struggling with this, and she's happy to help. And I think that was a really good relationship. And I mean, not everybody's going to build that relationship with their student teacher mentor, but just like building relationships with my students, I built one with her, and it was, I think, made my experience better.
Now, I was actually going to tell you that when we were searching for teachers to interview, that's what stuck out to me the most about yourself is if you didn't have first year teacher in your bio, I would not have known whatsoever. I just looked through your content and I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing to have. A lot.
Yeah. My principal told me a couple months ago that one of the reasons they hired me was because he had worked with my supervisor while I was student teaching, and they called and asked about me. And she was like, she's not a typical first year teacher. And sometimes that's a little bit hard to wear because I'm like, I do want to have a meltdown right now. Like a first year teacher should be able to. And I kind of feel like I have to hold it together a little bit more just because I think people do expect more of me. But yeah, I get that a lot. That, I mean, even like my teacher for best friend told me that she didn't feel like I was a normal first year teacher. And I do get that a lot. It kind of makes me wonder, what is a normal first year teacher like? I kind of want to go walk into a first year teacher's room and be like, what are you doing different than me? But I think honestly, it's just that life experience and having that military background really helps me. And I mean, I think it helps me with my classroom management too, honestly, because I don't have time for your games. Sit down. You know, I got that military look, quit it. So.
Do you think that's one of the biggest things that first year teachers might be struggling with, is that discipline level?
Oh, 100%. I mean, because when you're student teaching, you're following somebody else's classroom management. You don't get to try what works. It's different with every set of kids. It's different between class periods even. Yeah, so your first year is really the year you're getting to try these things out, and half of them don't work. And it's like every day you have to change what your strategy is because you're like, that didn't work and that didn't work and that didn't work. And a lot of us, you know, are apprehensive about writing kids up because we do want to be liked. I mean, everybody wants to be liked, but you know, you're like, I don't want to make them mad, and I don't want parents calling me. And yeah, you know, there's that fine line, like, when do I write them up? What do I do? Or should I talk to them out in the hallway, or should I call mom? And there's all these questions, and it's not really anything you had to deal with during student teaching. So I feel like that's the hardest part, honestly, is that nailing down that classroom management. Once you get it, I feel like it's a lot easier. It makes your life way easier when you got your class under control and managed and have that relationship and partnership with the kids to kind of be on task and know what they're supposed to be doing. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing we wanted to ask you, have you experienced any flaws or problems and issues with the educational system today?
Ooh, flaws or issues. I wouldn't say that I notice, I think flaws is a strong word. I think I would say there are things that I'd like to do differently, that if I could just do it my way, I would do it slightly differently. And I don't think that that's really a flaw. I think there's areas of improvement that could be made always, just like in everything else. And, you know, educational research leads us to those things. I mean, that's why we have conferences, and that's why we have just different things. But I mean, education has been very similar for quite a long time, we do things very similarly to the way that we used to do them. And we are just getting now towards changing, and curriculum's trying to change with the new math and Common Core and all that stuff that they went through, and kind of figuring out how the brain works, and having middle school be really its own thing. And have, I mean, not even all colleges offer middle grades as a degree even still. So, I mean, just within the last 10, 15 years, things in that area are constantly changing. So I always think there's room for improvement in anything we're doing, education included. But, I mean, you just got to find those people and nurture those people who are willing to step out of their comfort zone and try to create that change. And I mean, hopefully one day I'll be one of those people. I would like to be one of those people. Because like I said, I'm trying to write an article about looping. That's something I feel pretty strongly about. So we'll see if my school lets me do that. And I mean, obviously there's logistical issues with teachers moving up with their kids, which is what looping is, in case you weren't aware. So like my 6th graders would go to 7th grade, I would go with them. So I'd have the same kids, they would stay in the same class, and then we would not lose that time getting to know each other. Those relationships are already there with the parents, they're there with the kids already. I know what they've learned. I know what they're going to learn. So it's like really bridging those gaps, building that stronger relationship, which just continues to help with education. And I mean, that's still a fairly new thing in the United States. It does get done a lot more in elementary school than it does in some of the upper grades, but it's, you know, something that is still a fairly new idea in the United States. And, but education's always growing, and we just need those people who are confident and strong and, you know, willing to change and willing to look for better to make it different. So, and you're going to try things that don't work, and you'll throw it out with the bathwater, maybe with the bathwater. So.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the Philadelphia teacher, CJ, he said that he doesn't want to be the one that changes education. He wants to be a part of the community that changes education. Awesome. How important is it to have that sense of camaraderie and collaboration?
Oh, hugely important, because I mean, you cannot do this job by yourself. I mean, even though you're in the classroom every day by yourself, you are not doing this by yourself. I mean, there's constant communication between, just like my 6th grade team. You know, we meet once a week just to make sure everybody understands what's going on. If we don't have any questions, I meet with my content people, just math by themselves, at least a couple times a week, just to make sure, you know, oh, hey, do you like this thing I'm doing in class? Oh, you should use what I'm using. And, you know, there's that collaboration there. And then collaborations amongst schools. I work with another school sometimes on creating tests, because they have different ways of looking at things than I do. And sometimes I have a different way of looking at things. And that sometimes you get so bogged down in your own perspective and what your goals are that it's harder to see the bigger picture without that community of people. So he's fully right that it is a community of people that's going to be the changers. It's never just going to be one person.
I even have a friend right now, actually. He's doing his student teaching. He's just starting out. And he's making one of his first lesson plans. And his mentor teacher gave him an email of somebody that just loves to make lesson plans. And he was this teacher at another high school. And my friend reached out to him, and instantly he sent him the lesson plan without any questions asked. So
yes, teachers are huge sharers. I mean, just the other day, like I went to go observe an 8th grade social studies class, because I'd heard great things about this teacher, and she immediately was sharing her Google Drive with me and emailing other teachers and being like, hey, she needs this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're so nice. Like, yes, we are sharers. I mean, for the most part, I mean, there's obviously going to be those few that aren't, but I feel like for the most part, teaching community is a community. Like, it doesn't matter if you live in Florida. I'll be happy to share whatever I have with you. If you email me and let me know you need something, yeah, sure, not going to take, you know, whatever. I'll just share my whole folder with you. Don't judge me for the stuff that you don't like, but yeah, you can have it. So yeah, that's awesome.
Of course, another part of the community is the students themselves. What do you think you've learned from your classroom and your students specifically?
Oh my gosh. I tell my kids all the time that they're not the only ones learning. I learn every day. These kids crack me up. I laugh every day. They are so funny. Yes, I learn all kinds of things. I mean, just about themselves, about their lives, about different ways of doing things. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, in school, math came really easy to me, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be a math teacher, because I was like, I love math. It's so fun and awesome. And it's easy. But sometimes I'm standing up there teaching these kids and they're just staring at me with blank faces. And I'm like, does this not make sense? And they're like, we have no idea what you're doing. I'm like, okay, so how many steps ahead of you am I? And okay, gonna go home and research some stuff to figure out different ways of teaching. And sometimes the kids will have better ways to do this. Like, well, I thought about it this way. Oh, never thought about it like that before. Maybe that's better. And then, I tell the next class, I'm like, oh, does this work better? Yes. Okay. So yeah, the kids think I'm like this rock math star that just can pop off questions at the drop of a hat and all these answers. I'm like, have you realized that not a single day I've actually solved a problem? And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, I stand up here at the board and I ask you what the answer is, and I wait for you to put it in your calculator and tell me what to write on the board. I'm not coming up with these answers. You're solving them. And it was like glass shattering. The kids are like, holy crap. Yeah. You're the ones that are geniuses, not me. I'm just the person, making sure you're on track with what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, no. I learned, these kids educate me every single day in all kinds of ways. Yes.
I think those were usually my favorite teachers through school, the ones that never gave you the answer, but helped guide you to that answer.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard though, because I'm like, just get to the answer already, it's been 5 minutes, why is this still not coming out of your brain? But, and especially for us people who are control freaks and we want to control the situation, it's hard to let go and have that student-centered learning and it not be teacher-driven. It's something I struggle with a lot. But yeah, I think it's more meaningful for the students too when it's more guided and you're not letting them have that learned helplessness. Because even the kids will come up to me and they'll be like, I don't know how to do this. Yes, you do. And I asked them a question. That was one of my things my instructional specialist had said, is that her theme in the classroom was always, the struggle is real and I'm going to answer your question with a question. And I try, sometimes I'm not so great at that. So I try to do that occasionally. And I think that it shows when I do it, because they do get frustrated when you try it at first. They're like, I don't know what to do. And they're freaking out. But I think the more you practice it, the better they are at kind of being like, oh, okay. If that's the question, I know how to answer the question, which means I know how to answer my own question. So it's definitely not an easy task, but yeah. Yeah.
Although you're a first-year teacher, you do have a lot of wisdom and life experience that you've learned from, another career path, of course. What advice would you give to someone wanting to get into teaching, whether it's a switch of careers, they're just coming out of school, or they're just starting their student teaching?
Advice. Let's see. I would say if you love it, or if you think you're going to love it, try it. Because I think a lot of people, honestly, one of the reasons I was scared to be a teacher and kind of was staying away from it was because the idea of dealing with parents terrified me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if one of them yells at me? And now I think back to that and I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. But I would just go for it. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything to try, and you may hate it. And you may get into your first class like I did and feel like, holy moly, why was I not doing this 8 years ago? And I don't feel like you're ever too young to start teaching. I mean, they take teachers when I know there was a lady who was in our program that was like, I want to say she was 50 something. She had grandkids and she was awesome. She was like one of the nicest ladies I've ever met in my life. And I was like, you are going to be the coolest teacher ever. It's never too late to start, and it's never too late to realize that you're meant to do something. And, maybe it might not be what you thought you wanted to be when you were 14 or 15 or 22. But yeah, just go for it. That's what I would say. Go for it, give it your all, and know that sometimes your ideas of how something's going to be doesn't match reality. And, if it is something that you're maybe scared to go try and just take that leap into college and say, this is what my major is going to be and I'm going to follow it through, go talk to teachers who do this. We're always happy to talk about what we do. and share our ideas and our thoughts and stuff. And, you know, from teacher to teacher, we'll be real candid about the stuff that we hate and the stuff that we love. And we don't do that to scare people away, but we do it to, you know, do put a sense of reality into it, because, you know, teaching sounds glamorous sometimes, but sometimes it's sitting on the floor and printing off sticky notes and sticking 78 sticky notes into a thing. I mean, that's just, sometimes that's what your life is. And so yeah, communicate, ask somebody there. I mean, I don't know very many teachers nowadays that would be upset with having anybody in their classroom watching them teach, because we're so used to principals being in and out and other teachers being in and out. And so go watch somebody, go ask questions of somebody, and just take that leap and feel like you got this. Because sometimes that's what it takes, is taking the leap and faking it till you make it.
I think that's great advice, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah. Now, kind of going into the last segment of our interview here, we've talked about, of course, about your background, your teaching career. We wanted to pick your brain on maybe some overarching trends that we've experienced throughout the world and some stuff about your city. So what's your favorite part about your city?
Ooh, I would say the people. I'm actually not so fond. Like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite place to live, and we're constantly thinking, should we move? But I get very attached to people in general, probably why I like building relationships with my students. But that's, I think, been a big factor for us, is that we don't want to leave, because we have relationships with people here. And so it's not so much that it's the city that I love, but it's the people in the city that we love, that we don't want to leave.
What do you think you'd do if you were in charge for a day?
Ooh, in charge of like a school?
We'll go with that first, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I don't know. That's a hard question. I feel like, honestly, I would probably just do a lot of learning. I wouldn't want to change a whole lot. I would really want to see, how does this work? Because you see only one side of things sometimes, and seeing the other side from somebody else's point of view is really powerful sometimes. So I wouldn't change anything. I would literally just do it for the learning. Like, what does this person do every day?
I think that's where that drive for research and constant learning comes from, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Can't make change unless I know what's working and what's broken.
Yeah. Now this, I guess it sounds like it's a strong sense of community that you have.
I would say so. I mean, I think sometimes, like, you feel, because we've moved around so much, it's hard to feel like we have a lot of friends. But I do think, despite the fact that maybe our friends don't live right next door to us, we have people we can rely on if we need them. And now that I have this, you know, I'm at a school finally with people who are like-minded to me, I think has been a really big deal, because even in school with student teachers and things like that, people are very different, and it's hard to find people who are really share your beliefs and values, even just in teaching. But then when you're in a school that's hired you to be for the values that you have, that hires other people for those same values, it's like, this is like a big happy family, like being around people who think the way that you think and are excited like you're excited. And it's, it makes really strong bonds and makes it you feel like you can rely on people, and it's great.
Now, is that with the community itself or just your school?
I would say it's, I don't know. I feel like school to school, and then even just in the county in general, like amongst educators, I feel like we have a pretty strong bond community-wise. I don't really feel like I know a ton of people who are just local Georgia people other than educators, because we were military. But so I wouldn't say I have a huge bond with just the community in general. But I do feel like that exists here. And it's, if you're born here and you stay here, that there is a strong sense of that community in general.
Now, if you were to move, is that something you'd look for, whether it's a great team environment within a school or just a long-lasting community relationship?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I don't feel like, I mean, most of the places we always talk about moving, we would be very alone. We wouldn't have family really to rely on other than one location. And it would be like completely starting over, which is a scary thought. But I feel like when you're in the education world, and I'm sure, and I hope other jobs are like this, that, you know, that there is that sense of community and that sense of come on in and pop your feet up, you know. I feel like no matter where we moved, as long as I felt like I had my people and the people who think like me and are excited like me, that community would build itself quickly.
Kind of going into a couple overarching trends here, we wanted to ask you, are you an iPhone or Android user?
iPhone. I'm an Apple girl all the way.
Does that come from, you know, the usability of it, the easeability of it, how everything's streamlined and you have the cloud?
And it all works so well together. Like, I mean, iPhone to Mac to just whatever I could imagine. It works just so seamlessly together, and it's yes.
Is it safe to say that you wouldn't switch?
Oh yeah. Not going anywhere. I'll stay an Apple girl unless they do something dumb and break everything, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening either. I'm the same way. Now, another one was this ongoing trend of plant-based food products and the Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger. Do you think that this is just a food like fad, or do you think it's something that's sustainable and something people will actually integrate into their everyday diets?
That's a hard one because especially in the South, we like our meat. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. I don't know that I feel like most food things nowadays are fads in general. Like it's hard to not be a fad when there's food involved almost. Like you just eat food and it's not a fad. And then if you're eating anything that says that it has a name, it's almost like it's a fad. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure about the meatless thing. I really don't see that lasting very long. The meat industry is going to put a stop to that real quick, and so will the South.
Now, Amanda, today you've talked about your U.S. military past, your experience as a first-year teacher, and of course your take on Apple products. Is there anything else you want to tell our audience today before we let you go?
I don't think so. I think that we pretty much covered everything I could possibly want to tell you guys.
That's awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you very much for the time today. I think we have just over an hour. We really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.